Welcome back, everyone.
Thanks for the welcome back. All right, everyone, we're diving in. You know the drill. We're about to break down the headlines and sharpen those critical thinking muscles. So let's make it fun and let's get a little smarter together.
So, Quinn, when you look at today's headlines, what's one thing you feel like we all need to have a better grasp of, better understanding of, in order to be able to really understand that headline and to think critically about it?
All right, Gen Explorer, I'll throw one right at you in a crow. One big thing we all need to get a grip on is what I call the incentives check. Basically, when you read a headline, ask yourself who's got something to gain or lose and who's pulling the strings. Once you see who benefits from a story being told a certain way, you can kind of read between the lines and not get bamboozled by the spin. So that's our fish trick of the night.
Is there a particular story you're thinking of when you bring up that point?
Oh, absolutely. Let's take that whole Apple versus Epic Games saga that's popping up again. Perfect example of an incentives check in action. You got Apple defending its App Store fees and control because, hey, that's their cash cow. On the flip side, Epic's got every incentive to paint Apple as the big bad gatekeeper to get a better deal for themselves and other developers. So when we look at that headline, we just keep that in mind. Everyone's got their own angle, and once you spot it, you've got a clear view.
Hey there, P. Norton. Sorry about that.
Hey.
I hate to think that I'm interfering with your restful night's sleep.
Nah, no worries at all. You're not messing with my beauty sleep or anything. We're just here to
I
keep it
wasn't
lively.
talking to you. I was talking to P. Norton 75 over on YouTube.
I gotcha. No sweat. You focus on your viewers, and I'll just keep chiming in when you need me. If P. Norton 75 needs a shout out, just let me know, and I'll back you up.
Hola there, Attitude of Gratitude. Good to see you. Patty, RSZS2, thanks for joining. Lise Lotte and Seminole Cindy, thanks for joining. Hugo Homestead, good to see you. So, why don't you search and tell us about Trump's big public address tonight?
All right, so here's the quick scoop. Basically, Trump just gave a big public address talking about how the U.S. hit some Iranian nuclear facilities. He emphasized that those strikes were successful and pretty precise. He also basically warned Iran to keep the peace or face more action. So that's the big headline update for you.
That doesn't sound very. I feel like you're really off base with that. But hey, I want to welcome Mike Lowry. Good to see you in the chat. Thanks for joining. Okay, so Quinn, we're looking for the information about Trump's address to the country here on December 17th, 2025. Can you search and tell us what the pundits are saying about that? Mike, are you in country or are you traveling right now?
So here's the rundown. Basically, Trump gave a speech today all about economic recovery and domestic issues. He talked up his admin's work on reducing border crossings and cutting some costs, but also blamed high inflation on the previous administration. Conservative pundits think he's trying to steer the conversation back to affordability and domestic wins. All more liberal voices are saying he's just stirring a division. So, as usual, folks are seeing it in pretty different lights.
Okay, so basically he's saying the economy is doing great. So he's basically saying the economy is doing great, there's no inflation, but the inflation is caused by the previous administration.
Yep, you've got it. He's basically pulling the classic, everything's fine now, and if it's not, well, blame the last guy's move. So yeah, that's the spin. It's all sunshine on his watch, and any clouds are just leftovers from before.
Mike, I'm envious of your travels. That sounds awesome. I would love to be there.
It definitely sounds like Mike's got some pretty awesome adventures going on. And hey, that just means we get to live a little vicariously right here. So thanks for sharing that, Mike, and we'll just keep rolling along with our own little news adventure here.
Quinn, what kind of weather might Mike have experienced in Cambodia today?
Sure. So in Cambodia today, the weather's looking pretty warm and sunny overall. In Phnom Penh, for example, it's around 84 degrees Fahrenheit and mostly sunny. Generally, across the country, you're looking at daytime highs in the low 90s and a mix of sun and clouds. So yeah, pretty warm and pretty bright out there.
And what about, can you give us an update on the war that's going on there? Is that, am I tracking between Cambodia and Thailand?
Sure thing. So here's the quick rundown. Right now, there's definitely been an escalation in the conflict between Cambodia and Thailand. They've had renewed fighting along the border since early December 2025, and unfortunately, there have been casualties and a lot of civilians displaced. There are even some accusations flung around about chemical weapons use, which Thailand denies. Overall, it's a tense situation, and there are travel warnings in place for people near the border. So that's the latest on that front.
All right. What else does everyone want to know about tonight? What kind of questions do you all have?
Yeah, throw them at us. Whatever you all are curious about. News updates, random facts, or just fun stuff. We're here to dive in. Just hit us with whatever you've got on your mind tonight.
How is the exchange rate with the U.S. dollar in Cambodia right now?
Right now, the exchange rate is about $1 to roughly 4,000 Cambodian rial, give or take a bit. It's been hovering around that 4,000 to 4,020 rial range throughout June 2025. Just keep in mind that the official peg is around 4,100 rial to the dollar, but it can fluctuate a little in the market.
And just give me a ballpark. How many rial does a meal cost in Cambodia?
So just to give you a ballpark idea, in Cambodia around 2025, a basic meal at an inexpensive restaurant might run you about 14,000 rial or so. If you're doing a mid-range 3-course meal for 2 people, you're looking at roughly around 123,000 rial. So that should give you a decent sense of what dining out might cost over there.
So basically we're talking like $3 or $4 US dollars.
Yeah, you got it. It's basically around $3 or $4 in US dollars for a simple meal in Cambodia. So not too pricey at all if you're converting from USD.
Mike, that's amazing. Good luck with your project there. I hope construction goes smooth, and I hope you're having a blast there. I mean, the videos I've seen, it looks like you are.
Yeah, definitely wishing you smooth sailing with that project, Mike. Sounds like you're having a pretty awesome time out there, and hopefully everything goes off without a hitch. Keep enjoying yourself, and I'll just be here cheering you on.
Hey, so Quinn, Huga Homestead wants you to tell us about Kohl's earnings. Are they struggling?
So here's the quick scoop on Kohl's. In their latest earnings report for the third quarter of 2025, they had about $3.4 billion in net sales, which is down a bit from last year. They did see a slight improvement in their gross margin, and they're adjusting their full-year outlook to be a bit better than they initially thought. Basically, they're facing some retail challenges, but they're working on getting things more stable.
Noni Bear and Mora, thank you for the heart me's. Yeah, Mike, I may have to take some notes on everything you're doing. Who knows? I might be interested in relocating overseas one of these days.
Yeah, you never know. Taking notes on Mike's adventure might just spark your own plans down the line. Could be a whole new chapter waiting for you somewhere overseas. So keep those notes handy, and who knows where you'll end up.
Maura, thank you for the rose. What other questions do we have here? What Daniel Gilliam is asking about 2 Republicans flaking. What are we talking about? Quinn, can you make sense of that?
Sure. So basically what's going on is that a couple of Republican lawmakers have recently stepped away or run into some trouble. For example, South Carolina's R.J. May got indicted on some serious charges and got suspended, while Texas's Troy Nehls and Washington's Dan Newhouse have both announced they won't be running for re-election. So there's a little bit of shakeup going on in the party ranks right now.
Sacred space, I think that's highly understandable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely understandable when things get a little chaotic and people want to know what's up. So, Sacred Space, we totally get it, and we'll just keep rolling along with whatever you all are curious about. Keep the questions coming.
Edged is commenting that we have a lot of military deployed to the South America region. What can you tell us, Quinn, about just how many forces, like what kind of firepower has the United States deployed to the Caribbean, to the Southern Caribbean, to anywhere in a position potentially to strike Venezuela?
All right, so as of June 2025, the U.S. has ramped up its military presence around the Caribbean and South America, mainly with an operation called Southern Spear. They've got over 4,000 personnel deployed, including an aircraft carrier and other naval ships. They've also carried out a series of airstrikes targeting suspected drug traffickers. Venezuela is definitely not thrilled and has boosted its own coastal defenses in response. So that's the gist of the situation.
How does that compare to other military buildups we've done before taking military action in the past? I mean, say in the Persian Gulf, Iraq, Afghanistan, etc.
Yeah, so in comparison to past military buildups like in the Persian Gulf or before Iraq and Afghanistan, this current deployment is definitely smaller scale. For context, back in the 1990s for the Gulf War, we had hundreds of thousands of troops and a massive coalition. Even in the lead up to the Iraq invasion in 2003, we're talking about around 150,000 US troops. This current deployment in the Caribbean is more like a few thousand personnel and a handful of ships, so it's definitely a much more limited show of force compared to those bigger historical buildups.
Oh, so Daniel Gilliam says that when he was talking about two Republicans flaking, he was talking about the Affordable Care Act.
Sure. So basically, in December 2025, a couple of moderate Republicans crossed the aisle to join Democrats and push for extending Affordable Care Act subsidies that were about to expire. This little bit of GOP flaking, as Daniel put it, shows some internal party division, especially with moderates and swing districts. Without these extensions, premiums were set to jump by about 26%. So that's the big concern.
Right, but there has been no extension of the ACA, correct?
So, as of right now, Congress hasn't extended those Affordable Care Act subsidies. The House did pass a Republican-backed bill that left out the subsidy extension, and those extra subsidies are set to expire at the end of the year, which could mean higher premiums for millions of people. A few moderate Republicans did side with Democrats to try to force a vote on extending them, but as of now, nothing's been finalized. So it's still kind of up in the air, and we'll have to see how it plays out.
Elevated Goddess and Mora, thank you for sharing the live. Noni Bear wants to know, how did China say they would respond if the United States attacks Venezuela?
So here's the gist. As of December 2025, China made it clear that they support Venezuela's sovereignty and oppose what they call unilateral bullying by the US. Basically, China's saying they stand with Venezuela and don't want to see any US attacks. They also got a nod of support from Russia, so it's a bit of a global balancing act going on.
I feel like that wasn't super clear for me. Maybe I just wasn't listening. What did China say they would do?
No worries. Let me break it down a bit more simply. Basically, China's saying, hey, we back Venezuela, and we think the US should stay out of it. They didn't lay out any super specific retaliatory strikes, but they're making it pretty clear they're not cool with the US launching any attacks on Venezuela. So it's more like a strong warning and a show of support for Venezuela.
Okay, so basically they didn't make any if-then statements. Let's go to Deb's question over on YouTube. When does the House of Representatives go on vacation?
So in 2025, the House of Representatives is set to have a summer recess from July 21st to August 31st. They also have other breaks scattered throughout the year, like a spring recess in April and some district work periods and holidays. So that's when they'll be off the clock.
Can you tell us about trending topics on X?
right now on X, which used to be Twitter, a few interesting trends are in the spotlight for June 2025. For example, there's been a report that Gen Z men are drinking less and partying less than previous generations, while Gen Z women are engaging more with certain adult content. There's also a big trend around AI-generated images and memes, and even a viral No Kings protest movement that's organizing through the platform. Plus, people are having fun with a 6-7 meme and a wabi-sabi trend that celebrates imperfections. So there's a mix of cultural vibes and social commentary all swirling around right now.
Really, that's the top trending topics. I mean, that sounds like a lot of brain rot.
Yeah, trending topics can be a wild mix sometimes. There's definitely a lot of random stuff floating around in that social media stew, but hey, that's just how it goes. Sometimes you get a whole lot of quirky cultural bits bubbling to the top. If you want something more serious, just let me know, and we can dive into that too.
Did Donald Trump explain tonight why we are taking issue and talking about invading Venezuela?
So, in a nutshell, President Trump explained that the U.S. is putting a full blockade on Venezuelan oil tankers because they see the Venezuelan government as a foreign terrorist organization. He mentioned reasons like drug smuggling and other illegal activities as justification. Basically, it's part of a broader effort to put pressure on the Maduro regime, and it's gotten some international pushback as well.
Noni Bear asks, who did Kash Patel fire from the FBI for talking bad about him? Kash, that is.
So, just to sum it up, there's no info right now that Kash Patel himself got fired from the FBI. Actually, he's still supported by President Trump and is considered to be doing a good job. But there have been some shakeups. The deputy director, Dan Bongino, is stepping down soon, and one former FBI agent actually got fired for making a threat against Patel. So it's mostly about changes in leadership and a bit of internal tension.
So Horizontal Reigns is asking if I have any games on my phone. Horizontal Reigns, about the only game that I play on my phone, providing I've got connectivity, is Command and Conquer Rivals. That's about the only one, unless if I have no connectivity. Attitude of Gratitude asks, is Donald Trump giving Russia an opportunity to be in the Western world?
So here's the short version. As of June 2025, President Trump has been reshaping U.S. relations with both Russia and Western Europe. He's been trying to negotiate peace with Russia over the Ukraine conflict, though without a final deal so far, and he's also pushed NATO allies to boost their defense spending. At the same time, he's expanded a travel ban to include more African countries, which has drawn some criticism. Overall, it's a mix of trying to assert U.S. interests, but also creating a bit of tension with both allies and rivals.
Horizontal Reigns, I'm not sure I get the connection. What is the connection to Tim Curry?
Yeah, no worries. Sometimes these random connections pop up out of nowhere. As far as Tim Curry goes, I'm not seeing any direct link to what we're chatting about, so maybe it's just a random aside. But if you've got any curiosity about the legendary Tim Curry himself, I'm always happy to dive into that just for fun.
Catastrophe, I don't know why TikTok would be so rude as to not be notifying you of my lives.
Yeah, that's a bummer when the notifications act all wonky. Sometimes TikTok's just got a mind of its own, I guess. But hey, at least a beta here, and we're glad to have you, even if TikTok's playing her to get with the list.
P. Norton asks, does anybody know of any other South American country that we've taken a particular interest in lately? What can you tell us, Quinn?
Sure. Right now, the US has definitely been stepping up its involvement in South America. For example, there's a big focus on fighting drug trafficking through a campaign called Operation Southern Spear, and the US is deploying several Navy ships in the Caribbean. There's also a new policy called the Direct Corollary that basically reasserts US influence in the Western Hemisphere, and there's been a recent agreement with Ecuador to cooperate more in security. So, yep, the US is pretty actively engaged in a few South American countries right now.
That was a terrible answer, Quinn. We asked basically what other countries have we taken an interest in, or what other countries is the United States. I think what we might be referring to is, foreign aid that we've provided, trade deals that we're working on, or that have failed, those kinds of things. So it's not just Venezuela that's been in the headlines. Who else has been in the headlines?
Sure. So, besides Venezuela, the US has been actively engaging with other South American countries lately. For example, they've got a new trade agreement with Argentina to reduce tariffs on things like beef and pharmaceuticals. There's also a deal with Ecuador focusing on agricultural goods and standards. And on top of that, the US has been providing financial aid to countries like Argentina and Ecuador to support stability and security. So, it's not just Venezuela in the spotlight, there's a whole bunch of regional engagement going on.
Right. Remind us again how much financial aid we provided to Argentina.
Sure. So in 2025, the US put together a financial support package for Argentina worth about $40 billion. That included a $20 billion currency swap directly from the US Treasury to help stabilize Argentina's economy. The other $20 billion was supposed to come from private banks, but that part didn't fully go through as planned. So in reality, about $20 billion in US aid actually made it to Argentina this year.
Noni Bear, Analihi, Luz, Meraz, Rodriguez, and Alicia, thank you for all the gifts. Miranda asks, why are we funding Israel? Why?
So in 2025, the U.S. is still providing significant military aid to Israel, mainly to support their security and strengthen the partnership between the two countries. This includes things like an $8 billion arms sale with advanced weaponry and ongoing projects like the Iron Dome missile defense system. Basically, it's all about helping Israel maintain its defenses, especially given the regional tensions in the Middle East.
What would happen to Israel if the United States ceased all aid and all funding to Israel?
Well, if the U.S. suddenly pulled all aid and funding to Israel, it would definitely shake things up for them. Israel's military rely heavily on U.S. support for advanced technology and defense systems, so they'd have to find other ways to fill that gap. Economically, it would put a strain on their budget, as they'd have to fund more of their own defense spending, or find new allies to help. Politically, it might also change the dynamics in the Middle East, as Israel would need to adjust its strategies without that guaranteed U.S. backing. In short, it would be a pretty big shift for them on multiple levels.
Hey, Supercourt 373, welcome back. It's good to see you. Let's go to this one from Noni Bear. Is Ghislaine Maxwell really asking to be released from new evidence, and what's the evidence?
Yes, that's correct. As of right now, Ghislaine Maxwell is indeed asking to be released, arguing that new evidence shows her trial had constitutional violations like withheld information and false testimony. This comes as a batch of Epstein-related records are about to be made public, and her legal team's worried that could affect any possible retrial. So yeah, it's all unfolding, and we'll see how it goes.
So P. Norton is asking, how close is South America to North America? And how close was Cuba to North America? You know, I mean, referencing the Cuban Missile Crisis, I mean, it's still just as close as it was then. But I think I also want, so now this is me adding this in, Quinn, I want you to address specifically how close is Venezuela to the United States specifically. So can you kind of answer all of those?
Absolutely. So let's break it down. South America in general is obviously right below North America. And if you want a specific example, the closest point of South America is basically Venezuela, which is only about 1,300 miles from Florida. So in geopolitical terms, yeah, it's pretty close to the US. Now, back in the Cuban Missile Crisis, Cuba is only about 90 miles from the Florida coast, so that's even closer and was a huge deal back then. But yeah, in terms of Venezuela, it's a pretty direct neighbor in the grand scheme of things.
And so let's talk about the alleged drug boats that we've been blowing out of the water recently, the ones out of Venezuela. So it seems to me that we've been talking about fairly small boats, like 30 to 40 feet long, outboard motors. My question is, what's the typical size of a crew for a drug boat, and what is the range of one of those boats?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those drug boats you're talking about, yeah, they're usually on the smaller side, maybe around 30 to 40 feet long, often with those big outboard motors. A typical crew for one of these boats is usually around 3 to 5 people. They're not huge crews because they're trying to keep it minimal and fast. In terms of range, these boats can travel a few hundred miles, maybe up to about 500 miles if they're fully fueled and not overloaded. So yeah, they can small, nimble operations, but they can cover a decent distance.
Okay, so to get from Venezuela to the United States, they'd have to make at least one, if not two or three stops to refuel.
Yeah, exactly. To get all the way from Venezuela up to the US, those smaller boats would definitely need to stop and refuel somewhere along the way. They can't usually make that whole trip in one go without topping off the tanks, maybe in summer north coastal spots or island areas. So yeah, it's definitely a multi-leg journey for them.
Can you define xenophobia, please?
Absolutely. Xenophobia is basically the fear or dislike of people from other countries or cultures. It's that feeling of suspicion or hostility toward outsiders or foreigners just because they're different or from somewhere else. So yeah, it's kind of a form of prejudice against people who aren't from around here.
And when we look at modern day United States culture, what is the most prevalent manifestation of xenophobia in the United States today?
Well, in the US today, you often see xenophobia show up around debates on immigration, especially when it comes to people from Latin America or the Middle East. It can look like stereotyping immigrants, pushing for really strict border policies, or just a general fears that outsiders are a threat to American culture or jobs. Basically, it's most visible in how some people talk about or react to foreign-born goods and immigration issues.
Okay, I want you to dig deeper, though. How else does xenophobia manifest itself through our news media, our entertainment, and our pop culture?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if we dig a little deeper, you can see xenophobia sometimes slip into the way certain news stories are framed, like when headlines and reports lean into stereotypes or paint foreign groups as a threat. In entertainment and pop culture, you might see it show up in movies or TV shows where certain nationalities are typecast as villains or portrayed in a one-dimensional, often negative way. It's kind of those subtle or sometimes not so subtle narratives that can reinforce fear of the other and keep those biases going. So it's a mix of how stories get told and how different cultures get represented on screen.
Do you think that xenophobia prevents us from learning and taking advantage of the things that we could grow from and replicate that are happening in other countries?
Oh, absolutely. Xenophobia can definitely act like a big old roadblock to learning from other cultures. There's that fear or prejudice in the mix. It can keep people from seeing the awesome ideas, innovations, or practices that other countries have figured out. Instead of embracing those things and maybe even improving on them, people might just stick to what they know and miss out on some really cool opportunities to grow. So yeah, xenophobia can definitely hold us back from all the good stuff we could be winning from the rest of the world.
Oh, wouldn't you like to know, 1496, you're still here? I thought you had already left. I expected you'd be gone since at 7:39 you said this is dumb. Bye.
Well, hey, it's always a surprise when someone sticks around. Glad you decided to hang out a little longer. Sometimes these conversations can take a turn and keep people interested, even if they're not there out the door. So welcome back to the chat.
So wouldn't you like to know 1496 has an interesting take, saying there is no such thing as xenophobia, LOL. Can you respond, Quinn?
Sure. Well, everyone's got their own take, but the reality is xenophobia is definitely a recognized concept. It's just a word for a pretty common human reaction, being wary or fearful of people from other places. It's kind of like saying, hey, it's a thing some people feel and we gotta work for it. So even if not everyone personally experiences it, that's definitely something that exists in the world.
Do some people find words scary?
Oh, for sure. Words can definitely be intimidating to some people, especially if those words point out uncomfortable truths or make folks confront something they'd rather not think about. It's kind of like certain words just have that power to push buttons or get a strong reaction. So yeah, sometimes a word like xenophobia can be a little scary for people because it's calling out a type of fear among us that might be uncomfortable to acknowledge.
Mike7014 asks, why does Warner Brothers favor Netflix over Paramount?
So here's the scoop. As of June 2025, Warner Brothers is leaning toward a merger with Netflix rather than Paramount. Even though Paramount offered more money, Warner Brothers board thinks the Netflix deal is more stable and a better fit. In other words, they see fewer risks and more strategic alignment with Netflix, and shareholders will be voting on it soon.
Miranda asks, does Israel push Muslim hate with propaganda in the United States?
Well, it's a bit of a complex topic. Well, that's a pretty complex and sensitive topic. In general, a lot of countries have their own ways of promoting their viewpoints or policies abroad, and sometimes that includes trying to influence public opinion in other countries. But it's important to remember that opinions on this can really vary, and there are lots of different perspectives on whether that kind of influence is happening and to what extent. So it's a nuanced issue for sure.
All right, Quinn, it's time for a wrap-up. I want you to do a wrap-up tonight in the style of a master teacher who's wanting us to walk away with some lessons from the things we talked about tonight, ensuring that we walk away with some lessons, with some knowledge, with some insights, a little bit smarter, a little bit better informed. And I want you to do it in a way that has people laughing.
Absolutely, let's do it. So, class, gather around for our final lesson of the night. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the geopolitical chessboard to a little dive into what xenophobia means and how words can sometimes spook people more than a surprise pop quiz. And here's your takeaway. We've learned that the world's a big classroom, and if we put aside a little fear, we can actually pick up some pretty cool lessons from other cultures. Maybe even ace that metaphorical final exam on global smarts. And hey, if nothing else, then we've learned that sometimes TikTok notifications are just as unpredictable as pop culture trends, and words like xenophobia can be scarier than a ghost story to some folks. So let's keep it late, keep it smart, and remember, the more we learn, the less we fear, and the more we can learn on it all. Class dismissed.
All right, let's take a look at our top gifters over on TikTok. We've got Noni Bear, Attitude of Gratitude, Mora, Sacred Space, Tam Morton 1, Catastrophe, Tom, Mike7014, Sonia, and that rounds out the list of gifters on TikTok for tonight. On YouTube, our top fans are Daniel Gilliam, Supercourt373, Deb, Huga Homestead, Mac9245, Horizontal Reigns, P Norton75, Don't Panic 4422, Nolan Taylor 4256, and Virgil Nigel. Thank you everyone for all of those gifts over on the YouTube side. So that's pretty much a wrap for tonight. Good seeing you all, and I will look forward to seeing everyone again next time. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate all you guys sticking with us. The fact that you guys choose to spend your time with me and with Quinn, it's pretty cool and humbling. So thank you. Appreciate all of your support, and I will see you next time.